Want to sleep better at night? Fresh, cool air can help. You could put a fan in a window, or you could build your own bed frame and ventilated headboard where cool, fresh air can gently blow over your head and body. Bonus, no more smelling your partner's farts. I started by making the skeleton of the headboard out of 1x2s. Later on, a fan will blow air into this middle section of the headboard and out through holes in the headboard. The 1x2 skeleton pieces are then glued to a half-inch thick piece of MDF that will become the back of the headboard. I took some time to figure out the spacing I wanted for the air exit holes, and then wrote down that info to be used later on. Since I'm going to be breathing the air that passes through here, I figured it might be best to seal the MDF. While I don't live in California and thus MDF shouldn't give me cancer in my state, I figured it was worth doing. So put a couple of coats of polyurethane on, because air passing over poly must be safe, right? I don't know. I also put some on the inside of the front side of the headboard. The tape ensures I don't get poly on those areas, as those areas are going to be glued to the 1x2 skeleton. Roll on the poly, then peel off the tape. We're basically making a 1x2 and MDF hollow core sandwich. So I also cut some MDF strips for the legs for the headboard. We'll trim this all out later on with some miter trim pieces to make it look nice and hide all those ugly MDF edges. Now we need to make this look a bit more finished. I used some 1x4 strips of pine. This is the cheap stuff that you find at the big box stores. Well, it's relatively cheap anyhow. It's not the super cheap warped junk. It's slightly better than that. You'll find it in the molding aisle or the trim aisle usually, and you can usually find some straight pieces. We're basically mitering every piece so we hide all the edges. I really like this kind of look as you don't see any edges at all, and it makes the piece look like it was built out of big chunky posts. Here's a sample of how it'll go together. You miter everything basically. Here you can see how I built one of the two legs with my 1x4 mitered boards. I'll trim the bottom of the legs later. While my lumber was pretty good and my miters are decent, you do get some warpage in there. So it's not 100% perfect, but none of that will matter later on. I then worked on the other leg, adding more 1x4s with mitered edges, as well as a top piece that is mitered. I'm basically trying to build a frame on the front of the headboard. The idea is to hide the ugly edges, add some detail and depth, and to make a frame for the headboard insert, which you'll see in a bit. I'm only doing this much detail on 3 sides of the headboard legs. On the inner side of each leg, I just planed down a 1x2 without any miters because you're never going to see the inside of the headboard legs anyhow. This is what the top piece of the framing looks like. You can see both long edges are mitered and the end is as well. This completes the look of big chunky headboard legs. I'm no miter expert, but going slow and measuring very accurately made this pretty easy. This is the backside of the headboard with trim pieces in place. Some of my miter joints that looked great during glue up didn't dry as perfect as I'd like, but I'm painting this so a little filler will correct that. This is the front side of the headboard. It's the same as the back except that it adds a bottom horizontal piece of trim, just for looks even though you won't really see it that much. I added some filler and sanded things a little bit here. Then I cut a piece of 1/2 inch thick MDF to fit inside the trim frame. I made it about a 1/4 inch less in both width and height to account for some batting and fabric to be wrapped around it. So this is what I'm going to be calling the headboard insert. Now, do you remember that grid pattern that I showed you earlier? I transferred that pattern to the 1/2 inch thick MDF headboard insert. Then I used a 1-inch hole saw and drilled out holes through both the 1/2 inch MDF insert and the 1/2 inch MDF that makes up the front of the headboard behind the insert. I find that drilling one hole, then dipping the hole saw teeth in water to cool it and clean the teeth helps and makes things go a lot faster. Here's what it looks like with the holes drilled through both pieces of MDF. The cardboard was there just to keep the removable 1/2 inch insert centered. Here's what it looks like with the 1/2 inch MDF insert removed. We'll later wrap that in fabric and it'll be attached back to the main part of the headboard. Let's not forget the headboard also needs a bed frame. For that, I'm using 1x8 inch poplar boards as I wanted something straight that would also have structure to it and hold the box spring and mattress. I'm making this to fit a king-size mattress, so I cut my left and right side pieces to 81.5 inches long and my head and foot sides to 76 inches. I know I'm not giving a lot of measurements here because your bed may vary a bit, or you may have a queen or a cal king or who knows what you're doing. Measure your mattress and go from there. Finally, I'm using some pine 2x2s to make the frame that the box spring sits on. I taped 3 of my 2x2s together, then cut them down to 80 inches to fit the inside of the bed frame. I ran these through my dado stack set to 3/4 of an inch wide, and 2 passes get you a total of a 1.5 inch slot. I also set the dado stack height to only go up 3/4 of an inch into the wood. These joints will allow the 2x2s to create lap joints and make everything really strong. This is what these 3 lengthwise pieces look like, all dadoed out. These run from the head to the feet. On the left here, you can see the cross pieces of 2x2. These will run perpendicular to the 3 pieces on the right, and the dados will fit into each other to create strong lap joints. I've glued and screwed the bed frame together. It's just a box, nothing complicated. It's shown upside down here. Here you can see how the 2x2s are attached to the frame. Again, the frame is upside down. When assembling all of this, you'll want a carpenter square, so you can glue, clamp, and screw for perfect corners. You want a rectangle, not a parallelogram. The one useful thing geometry taught you is the Pythagorean theorem. That whole a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Remember that thing? You can use that to double check that you made a perfect rectangle. I use some stainless steel Spax brand deck screws along with wood glue to hold all of this together. It's very solid. Next up, we can start adding the 2x2s that will run left to right or perpendicular to the 3 we already had attached. Because squeaky beds drive me nuts, I glued and screwed every lap joint together. Of course, if you're doing that, you'll want to measure your doorways, your entry into your house, hallways. Make sure that this thing will fit through all of those as one solid piece. Otherwise, you're going to need to make a bed that's kind of something you can disassemble. Now we need some legs for the frame. I'm using 2x2s again, and I want them beefy and strong, so here's how they'll end up. Here's one leg being assembled with glue, clamps, and two 2.5-inch deck screws. This is the finished bed frame, almost ready for paint. So we have our 4 outer legs, and then I added 3 legs in the middle. I want this to be super strong and squeak-free. For the middle legs, I used 3 2x2s all sandwiched together, with the middle 2x2 being about 1.5 inches shorter than the other 2, so that the bed frame 2x2s fit in. It's sort of a U-shaped cradle. Glue and screws are used here as well. Did I mention beefy and squeaky free yet? We're getting closer to paint. I'm mocking up the frame here to the headboard to make sure that everything looks good. I then clamped it together so I could see how the bed headboard hardware will line up. And here's how the bed frame to headboard hardware looks. You just make some mortises on each piece, screw the hardware in, and it makes attaching and detaching the frame and headboard super easy. I'll spare you the boring sanding bits, and we'll move on to the paint. I sprayed on 2 coats of primer and then 3 coats of ultra flat black. I am no painter. Actually, I'm no woodworker. I'm literally just making all of this up as I go. That's how I prefer to work. It's more fun for me. But I wanted to see how good of a paint job I could get, so I decided to color sand in between every coat of primer, color, and clear. This was probably overkill. Using water and 400 grit sandpaper makes this easy, though a little scary as you basically ruin each sprayed on coat you just made. So things get uglier before they get better. This is the final result after 2 primer coats, 3 color coats, and 4 to 5 coats of ultra flat clear poly. Time consuming, but so worth it. Now we have the headboard and frame attached, but next we need to build the air box that connects our fan to the headboard. This is built just like the headboard. It's a 1x2 skeleton with 1/2-inch MDF on the front and back. And then I add a 4-inch round to a 10x3 rectangle bit of HVAC ducting. The duct gets screwed in and then some silicone caulk to make it airtight. And this is the completed air box. I painted this with the same black paint, but just rolled it on since you're not going to see this box once it's installed. Now we take the MDF insert and cover it in some batting and fabric. We chose this blue fabric, which is very tough, sort of canvas-like. I think it's for outdoor furniture. Stretch it on and staple it in place. It came out pretty nice and hides all those holes we drilled, but allows the air to pass through. An iron will help get wrinkles out later on, but this is the completed bed so far. The insert is attached with MDF threaded inserts. I realize that's using the word insert too much, but that's what they're called. Next up is the fan that will blow air into the headboard. I like these AC Infinity branded fans as they're quiet, use very little energy, and they're programmable and even Wi-Fi enabled. That means I can easily set up a timer to turn on the ventilated headboard at a certain time each night, and to a certain speed, and then off again when I wake. So not only is it a ventilated headboard, it's a smart headboard to boot. It's easy to set up too. Just plug the fan into the controller and then into an outlet and you're basically done. And then there's an app for your phone to set up the schedule if you want to do a scheduling timer on it. It even has a temperature sensor so you can control the fan on and off or fan speed based on temperatures if you want. It also has a soft start so you don't hear it turn on or off as you sleep. Here's the initial mock-up of the fan strapped to the bed. The straps are included, along with some sound insulating ductwork. That'll help keep things quiet. For now, I'm just pulling air from under the bed, which is still cooler, into the headboard, but in the future I'll duct part of this to the outside. And this is how it looks with the box spring and mattress in place, and the completed and made up bed along with the matching bench I made. Future upgrades include ducting to the outside, as well as making matching floating nightstands and a matching floating TV cabinet, so stay tuned for more. Overall, I'm really happy with how it came out. This is the biggest woodworking project I've ever tried, and everything worked out like I pictured it in my head from the start. Having a gentle breeze of fresh air over your head is amazing. You can even scent the air with some essential oils if you want, which actually is kind of nice. But let's face it, your partner will appreciate not smelling your farts more than anything else. I hope you enjoyed this, and if you did, check out this video to my bench project build as well. I would love a like. And if you subscribe to my channel, then you've basically made my day. Thank you very much.